This is Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance, joined today by Eric Bauman, chair of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party, vice chair of the California Democratic Party. And I think it's fair to say it's the best of times and the worst of times for the Democratic Party. In California, the Democrats did smashingly well. And nationally, Donald Trump surprised everyone and will be the president of the United States.
So it appears.
It does appear that way. Let's start with California. We know that the Democrats gained seats in the Assembly and the Senate. They now have supermajority status. Hillary Clinton carried the state swimmingly. Pretty much a status quo election in California. It looks like 2008, 2012.
Well, I think it was actually a really good election. But, I have to start off by telling you, I'm really of this two minds, when I think about what we did in California and how we did it electorally, while at the same time we were exporting both dollars and volunteers to multiple states, particularly Arizona and Nevada, and later on a bit to Pennsylvania and Ohio.
Well, I mean, arguably those exports were wise. I mean, Nevada went for Clinton.
Right.
Arizona, God,
close.
3.5 points. They're calling it the next big swing state.
Right.
So, the West seems to be trending differently than the rest of the nation. But I do want to get a sense from you. So, California state legislature swings to the Democrats pretty handily. In the congressional race, or the races, 53 seats, no flips, one way or the other. And I read recently that Hillary Clinton carried 7, I think, of 14 congressional districts held by Republicans, and yet none of them flipped.
Well, so the way voters voted in different parts of California, some of it was shocking. When you see Hillary Clinton get 49.5% of Orange County, and the Republican nominee only get 43%. It's the first time that's happened since 1922.
Orange County was not close. She won by over 100,000 votes.
I mean,
it was not close.
It's amazing. And in places around the state. There were very competitive congressional races in a few seats. In 2 of those seats, 3 of those seats, you had incumbents. It's always a harder fight.
It is.
It's always a harder fight. The 25th Congressional District in Santa Clarita was one we had high hopes that we could win.
That's the Steve Knight seat.
Especially while we were had an extraordinary candidate also in the Assembly seat that overlaid it, and we had a good candidate in the Senate seat.
Christy Smith.
And it felt really good. The energy in the community, because I was out there a bunch of times, the energy in the community was very high. But in the end, something changed. So what is the something changed? The Comey announcement was a pivotal moment. I don't necessarily blame the entire outcome of the election on that, but I think if you just step back and you look at the polling, which, by the way, the polling was all really accurate in reality. I mean, you look at what the margin is.
Well,
every poll in the country was within decent poll.
Wait
within
a second,
the margin
but
of
it's
error.
interesting. I mean, by the end, the polls seemed to suggest that she was 1 to 3 points ahead. She will win the popular vote by 2 points.
Correct.
So everyone's yelling and screaming about the polls.
Right. No,
the polls seem to have been accurate.
The polls were accurate, and that's exactly the point. But here's what did happen. If you were following the trajectory up the week leading into Comey's Saturday letter,
she was
11
12
days
points
before,
ahead.
And she was going this way. Okay? That letter hit, and for 3 days, the media coverage was sustained and focused on that letter. And the Republicans, hit it hard. And because of that, even if you say, well, that 6 or 8 or 9% of undecided voters that were left, some number of them were reminded of the things that always made them uncomfortable about Hillary Clinton. That's a fact. The fact that on the Saturday before the election, he said, sorry, I'm just joking, nothing changes here. It takes time for news to break into people's minds.
I want to talk about the blue wall that came crumbling down in Michigan, in Wisconsin, and in Pennsylvania. I was in Michigan yesterday, literally yesterday, interviewing elected officials, and I spoke with a Democratic state representative. And I asked him, what happened? Most of the country expected that the Democrat would carry Michigan. And he said something to me that was very interesting. He said that he was speaking with the head of one of the labor unions, and the labor union chief said, we're having difficulty out here. Here's the problem. The Democrats are talking about women's rights, LGBT rights, and the poor, and not talking about the trucker making $50,000 a year. And I want to get your take on that.
How many times I have sat here and I always talk about middle-class workers. I think middle-class work. I think those other items are incredibly important.
I hear you.
But the middle class, which was the union class, the Rust Belt was built on it, was wiped out in the last 30 years.
Oh.
And amazingly, they voted for a guy whose shirts are manufactured overseas, whose hats are manufactured overseas, whose ties are manufactured overseas, because they actually believe that he's going to bring jobs back.
But the question becomes, this is the president-elect. I mean, he is a Republican, and it's always been the Republican Party who has been for free trade, and the Democratic Party that's more protectionist. Mm-hmm. And he's flipped the script. And I'm wondering, how was he able to do that with union households who know for decades that it's the Democrats who have been more wary of trade?
First off, he's a celebrity. Let's not forget that. People know him and see him differently. How many times over the last 6 months did we talk about how the media just didn't treat him and people just didn't react to him the way they would a regular, normal
But
candidate?
I do want to ask you, and I know you're in California, but it's fair to say that the Clinton campaign knew that Ohio was at risk and Iowa was at risk. If those two states were at risk, why wasn't Michigan also seen at risk, or Wisconsin? I mean, look, Pennsylvania, they were there. That was a big surprise. But if Ohio and Iowa at risk, what about Michigan and Wisconsin? She never visited Wisconsin after the primary. Michigan in the last week. Her husband was screaming from the rooftops, we got to get to the upper Midwest. Hard to say.
I wasn't in the back room, so I can't tell you.
Yeah.
I know that my friends on the ground were worried. There was clearly something palpable going on. And those formerly middle-class workers, all those United Auto workers, all of those steel workers, all of those coal workers, all of those steel mill workers who don't have jobs anymore are angry, they're frustrated. And the Barack Obama economic recovery, which is a great recovery, but it hasn't touched them.
Where does the National Democratic Party go from here?
That is a question that I can't answer. And the reason I can't answer it is because within the Democratic Party right now, there's a struggle over the future of the party, the direction of the party. Do you become more populist? Do you become more progressive? Do you become a combination? Do we suddenly realize that Howard Dean was the one who had it right when he said we had to be present in 50 states? Yes. Yes, he was 100% right.
Although Donald Trump wasn't. He wasn't president in 50 states. He threaded the needle. He said he was going to go to the Rust Belt, and he did.
True. But when you're talking about building a party and trying to really rebuild it and build it strong, you have to build everywhere. You have to engage on everything. And voters are of an interesting mixed mind. Because in North Carolina, they ousted the Republican governor over a transgender bathroom bill.
And they voted for Donald Trump.
And they voted for
His name is Eric Bauman, chair of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party, vice chair of the California Democratic Party. My name is Brad Pomerance. We thank you so much for joining us from West Los Angeles on Charter Local Edition.